Okay, we're continuing with the quote book, Holy Grail Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers, alphabetical order. Friedrich Schelling, a German guy, he said, all rules for study can be summarized by this one rule: learn only in order to create. Now, I think that sounds like a lot of fun, but the reality is most people are poor, and if they don't work, they starve to death. So most people don't have that much leisure time. If you're going to create high-level artistic work, academic work, you got to have the time to do it, which means you got to have a specialized society and the freedom to do it. But it's certainly fun. It's just hard to monetize creativity. It's hard to monetize academic work that's high quality. Okay, so he continues, only he who knows God is truly moral. And I think there's a lot of truth in that one. Basically, either society is going to return to Christian ethics or it's going to return to slavery. It's obvious. I know a lot more than most people about history, and I can tell you, there's nothing more obvious than that. All you got to do, read the Old Testament. The people turn away from God, they get put into slavery. Look at Soviet Union, 1919, they turn away from God, they get put into slavery. Okay, it's just a fact. There's no way around it. As people say, you can't enslave a Bible-reading people. If everybody read the Bible, it just wouldn't happen. Because when people read the Bible and follow Christian ethics, they say, I'm going to do the right thing. I don't give a shit about the money. I'm going to do the right thing. Look on the internet now, and all you see is endless sellouts. All the bro science and all the high-fat phonies. Why do they all sell out? Because that's where the money is. Okay, so only Christianity can make people say, I will do the right thing, regardless of the money. Like Augustine had said, right is right, even if no one's doing it. Wrong is wrong, even if everyone's doing it. Okay, next one is Carl Friedrich Schinkel. He was also a great artist. He made beautiful paintings of cathedrals. Okay, he was a great architect. He said, first delight and then instruct. Indifference to the fine arts comes close to barbarism. Yeah, I would agree with that. That basically all this stuff, this literature, this culture, it develops your mind. It gives you better psychology, better understanding of people. And like Ayn Rand had said, art is a concretization of metaphysics. It gives you in your mind's eye a goal of what you could do with your life. You say, gee, I want to be like that guy. Like for myself, I want to be like Aristotle. I want to be like St. Thomas Aquinas. I want to be like the Irish monks who saved civilization by recording the great books of the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans in the Bible. Okay? So by knowing about them, it gave me an option to choose, what I want to do with my life. So that's good. It's good to read a lot because that's where the information is. It's in the books. Nowadays, you can get a lot of information off YouTube and reading on YouTube, watching videos, but eventually you're going to have to read a lot of books too. Okay, and the next thing is he says, indifference to the fine arts comes close to barbarism. Yeah, and I've said that too. The caveman painted on the wall. Most cultures don't even paint at all. Come on, what is that? Recent improvements enabling works of art to be duplicated faithfully may properly be used to give industry a direction in which beauty is as important as utility. Why not make things beautiful? The Gothic cathedrals are beautiful. The Ivy League universities with Gothic architecture are beautiful. The Gothic style is the best example of artistic expression, architectural expression of ideas. Gothic architecture is capable of expressing a variety of ideas, even the contradictory. Gothic architecture is both the visible expression of the Germanic soul and an ideal vehicle for Catholic worship. That is true. Gothic architecture is the best architecture ever in the history of the world. There was a guy by the name A.W. Augustus Welby Pugin. He was a Catholic architect in England in the mid-1800s. And he basically said, Gothic today, Gothic tomorrow, Gothic forever. He said, everything beautiful and magnificent in a cathedral is Catholic. Everything debased and ugly is Protestant. You go inside a cathedral, you see the Catholic cathedrals. They're just magnificent. All this beautiful sculpture of saints and stuff, the Virgin Mary and Christ, and then you see all these beautiful paintings. Then you go inside a Protestant, and there's usually like nothing there. Or they'll even have their secular leaders in there. They secularize things, stupid. All right, the next guy is pretty interesting. Heinrich Schlieman. This guy's a real heroic guy. He lived from 1822 to 1890. He was born in Germany. His father was a Lutheran pastor, and he taught Heinrich about the Iliad. Okay, so Heinrich really liked that growing up, reading about the Iliad and the Odyssey of the ancient Greeks. And he was a real brilliant guy. In his course of his education, he felt he needed to learn Russian, taught himself Russian. He felt he needed to learn Latin, taught himself Latin. He felt he needed to learn Greek, he taught himself Greek. And he even was so excited about learning Greek, he married a Greek woman so that he could talk Greek with her. Okay? He became very rich in his business. And he was pissed off because from his calculations and his reading, it was obvious to him that Troy had been a real city and it had existed. And he even knew where it was. But all these academic college professors, a bunch of dipshits, were giving him a hard time saying, oh, what do you know? You're not a real professor. You don't know anything. And so he was very successful in business. He saved up all his money and he went to ancient Greece in the region of Troy, sort of at the Hellespont between Europe and Asia. And working with his wife and some people he hired to work with him, he found Troy, okay? And one telegram he sent back to some of his detractors, he said, I have gazed upon the face of Agamemnon, the mask of Agamemnon. And he did it. He proved Troy existed. So he said, here's one of his typical statements. From that moment, when he realized that's what he wanted to do, from that moment I did not cease to pray to God that by his grace it might one day be permitted to me to learn Greek. Talent means energy and persistence and nothing more. My sole and only aim is to be able to establish a historical fact on which I disagree with some eminent historians and geographers. We could imagine nothing pleasanter than to spend all of our lives digging for relics of the past. Like him and his wife, they just loved to dig around for these ancient Greek relics, and they found Troy, they found all kinds of things. It was magnificent. So what I would say is Heinrich Schlieman, he's like Indiana Jones in real life, like a heroic archaeologist. He transformed the field of archaeology in the 1800s. It's magnificent. So that's Heinrich Schlieman.